So I decided to try putting the Quiet Speculation package back into the deck. I really felt like it lost something when I took that out, because although the single cards that I used to replace it were powerful cards, overall the effect seems to have been weaker. So I put it back in, and this is the opponent I ended up facing, Super Chevalier. And at the end of this, I'll go ahead and display the deck. So he set it to a match, but I ended up having to play him 2 separate games because he quit after he didn't win the first game. I'm not really sure how that constitutes a match, but at least he did play both games. So my hand is at the bottom of the deck, but I'm the opponent at the top due to the glitch that's been going on. This is my opponent playing Teferi. So I'm going to go ahead and minimize Queen, and we'll get started. So I mulligan, mulligan, mulligan against monoblue Teferi, loaded with counterspells. That should be basically a game over. Then even worse, I end up tutoring for, so I'm down a card as well. However, I get Quiet Speculation, and Quiet Speculation really is just the craziest card in this deck, so let's see how this plays out. So I spec myself a Deep Ray Grudge. Standard package. My opponent draws and says go. I draw and try to get down with Relic, which he counters. So I have the Vamp, so I figure I'll go ahead and deep now since I can use it as a precursor to Vampiric Tutor. So I do. Which he counters. Lapse on a deep is not as good as Remand on a deep, but pretty good when it's flashback. Any flashback card, really. So at the end of his turn I have Vamp, which he counters and bounces land. And I've got no play. So at the end of my turn, my opponent goes for it and walks into the crumple. So now we have a game where he at least doesn't have the abuse of the commander. He's just got a bunch of counter spells, but no pressure. And so I can start to actually grind out the cards in his hand. So I just draw and say go. Get down with more islands. There's some white. Okay, Bant Charm is online. Tomb. I decide to hold. Play the Bayou instead. That way I can Bant Charm and leave make it appear that I have 2 blue available for a counterspell as well. Playing 2 lands. So my opponent's up to 10 mana. I have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I'm not that far behind. I'm down a card and a couple of mana. So I attempt a Lantern after my main. And that's great because now I know that if he happens to have something like Back to Basics, I've got Array ready to go. I'll fight any land, including the snow-covered island. So I thought about just grudging his factory after he activates it, but then I thought I would leave grudge because since he knows that I can do that, he most likely will have an artifact in his hand and he was just using it as bait, so I just go out and waste it. Besides, there's very little opportunities to play a wasteland. On the other hand, he could have been baiting so that he could play it on basic, but you know, what are you gonna do? So I attempt to top. He has dismiss. I might have let a regular counter go. I would have attempted to counter a regular counter with Bant Charm. Take that back. But he throws in another counter, sort of a delay on the charm. So at this point, I might have let top go and with Cryptic up. But for one thing, I wouldn't have Cryptic up, and for another thing, his counter draws a card, so I want to resolve Cryptic, so I go for Cryptic. And what I do is I want to let the delay happen on the band charm, because there's a chance that I'll be able to recast it for value later. So I play the cryptic on the dismiss. But he has a hinder for the cryptic, so it doesn't matter anyway. So cryptic is countered, band charm is delayed, top is dismissed. And he gets to make a play, but he has none. So perfect top deck. So during his upkeep, I go for the teachings. I don't want to let him draw a card and have him be one card deeper towards getting something like fairy trickery, hinder type counterspell. So I go for the teachings right off the bat. He's got mana drain though, so now he's going to get 4 mana. So this looks pretty bad. He uses it to play Glenelendra Archmage. And that's it. So a very frustrating situation with a low hand, but acceptable. And my deck is just being really nice to me with the counters in this game. What is that I've drawn? Well, Cryptic is 1. Forbid is 2. So hey, 2 counterspells this game. That's pretty nice. Band Charm, 3. So I go for Humility. This is a ploy. I don't really want Humility to resolve, because I want to be able to use Queen to pressure his hand. But if it resolves and shuts down Glen, I'm okay with it. I do have the ability to just ray the Humility off if I decide to go the Queen plan. And if it doesn't resolve, then that's part of the setup to get rid of Glen. I'm going to have to spend cards anyway, so I'll let that happen, no problem. And I'm really hoping he doesn't play a spell here with the blue floating, because I can't forbid successfully. But thanks to his terrible delay, everything works out perfectly, and cha-ching, value. He tries to protect his creature with Repulse. Now at this point I could have Mysticaled for a counterspell or mana drain, almost like a counterspell. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and cast it tapping out. But I really want a Mystical for Stroke. So I go ahead and just fire the Forbid off. Can't really afford to have him repulse a Glenelendra. I'd probably lose the game if that resolves. Fortunately, he appears to be out of gas. That was my upkeep, of course. So this is great. I draw the Crypt, and now I'm able to flash back the Teachings. And this time I decided to do it during his end step instead of his upkeep, because I wasn't sure what I would, if I would want to pay life with the Tomb and then go get like an answer to whatever he played, or not pay life with the Tomb and go get Stroke. Since I didn't know, I let him have his upkeep and draw phase, and he made no play, so I used the Lantern's mana on the Tomb in order to prevent taking damage. But he gets a counterspell, so good thing. And it's a Dissipate too, so it was actually really good that earlier he didn't have that. So unfortunately he's just playing the overly annoying counterspell deck where you pick one blue commander and then you just counter until you're annoying as hell and nobody likes you. However, that doesn't, as annoying as it can be and as effective as it can be, just because he has more counterspells than you doesn't mean you have to lose the game, right? So Queen comes down, and that makes me nervous because it's quite possible he's got Theft at this point. But what are you going to do, right? So, make a few babies now. I'll leave Tomb up so I can make another one if I want to. Treachery. Yeah, not surprising, so I make another token in response. Okay. And draw a Mystical Tutor, which is really nice. Let's see, what haven't I got yet? Well, unfortunately, I've used all my flashback spells, but that's kind of what I was saying at the beginning of the game. Like, look at how important flashback is against garbage like this, to push them to counter and counter and counter again until they can counter no more. So I think about attacking here to encourage him to make some tokens, and then I realize he's going to make tokens anyway, so don't bother. So it's really just a question of how many he makes. So he makes 1, 2, 3. And he makes the 4th one, so I figure he's used delay, he's used mana drain. I've seen a lot of counters, memory leak, miscalc. So he might have negate or a counter spell, but I'm not going to wait for him to tap out, because if he has a 3 casting cost counter here or a 4 casting cost counter and he doesn't tap out and I don't kill Treachery now, I'll hate that decision. I'd rather go for it under the assumption that he's not going to make a sliver, or excuse me, that he will make a sliver and doesn't have the counter, or that he will make a sliver and does have the counter but it's not 2 mana. Basically the scenarios are he makes a sliver and he makes a sliver with a counter he can't use, so this play is good. He doesn't make a sliver with a counter he can't use, this play is good. He doesn't make a sliver but he doesn't have a counter he can't use, so this play is good. He doesn't make a sliver and he has a counter he can use, this play is bad. So 3 out of 4 times this play is good, so that's why I went for the Ray. And he doesn't have the counter. So I get to kill Queen. That was the end of my turn, of course. Or rather, I get to kill Treachery. He takes a peek and has no outs, and I win. So this is the version with spec back in, and Personal Tutor is specifically in because of how good spec is, and you saw how it played out there. But of course you can go get, like, you know, Mind Twist, Yawgmoth's Will, Demonic Tutor, Wargate. You could Personal Tutor for a deep analysis if you didn't already use one, and then not fall behind that way. So it's got options. It's not the best, but let me show you the deck list. So in order to fit it all in, I had to pull out Eternal Dragon, which bothers me. This is not actually in there. See, 99 out of 100. Don't know how to fit this back in. Really want it back in. I think it's a pretty great card. But for now, this is the deck list. So I had to pull out Eternal Dragon. I had to pull out Rolling Earthquake. I had to pull out Fire and Ice. I had to pull out Isochron Scepter. And then I put in, and I had to pull out Nature's Claim. And then I put in Ancient Grudge, Ray, Deep, Spec, and Personal Tutor. So, out of all the cards that were removed, Claim, Nature's Claim, Fire Ice, Isochron, Eternal Dragon, and Rolling Earthquake. The one I missed the least, perhaps, is Rolling Earthquake, although it's a very cool card, very interesting and powerful card. It also is a little redundant here, and it's okay to pull. Not too bad, you know. Claim for more artifact removal and enchantment removal in a different form, that's perfectly fine. So really that leaves me with Isochron, Fire Ice, and Dragon. I miss those 3 cards, but I don't see a way to put them in here. So if you do, I definitely appreciate your assistance. Otherwise, you may have to just accept that they're not going to make the cut. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed. I'm going to do one more game, so stick around for that if you're interested, against this guy. And you'll see in this other game as well how, again, this is very important that I have these flashback cards, and I think that I've been struggling with blue up to this point because I pulled them. Alright, see you next time.